Let's move on to this next section and look at logging access control lists. Now, this is a pretty neat feature actually, because what we can do is we can actually see via a syslog message when an access list line has a hit on it. So I showed you when we do the show access list command on the router that the router will show you how many packets have hit each line of the access control list. Well, if we just modify our access control list a little bit and add the word log to the end of each line, what'll happen then is, in addition to having a counter increase every time a packet hits one of those lines of the list, we're also going to send a syslog message indicating what packet was allowed through that line of the access control list. Now, this has a lot of value in that we can observe all the traffic going through our router and have a log of it. However, this can also create issues, especially if your router doesn't have all the processing power or have the network bandwidth it requires in order to send out all those log messages, especially if your router is heavily used. So this logging feature is very, very useful. It can cause some problems. So if you do choose to use this in a production network, make sure you do some testing and make sure your equipment can handle all those extra logging messages that you're putting on it. So let's just do this demonstration. The lab that we're going to set up here is the exact same lab that I have set up already for the extended access list. We're just going to modify that list to put logging on it and then turn on the syslog server on my workstation. So to do this, what I want to do is SSH to my router and examine the access control list I have there and make a copy of it so that I can modify it and then reapply that access control list. So we're going to SSH to 10.0.0.1. And if you remember, I had to add a line to my access control list to allow me to SSH into the router. So here's that access control list, and there's the line that's allowing me to SSH into the router. So what I want to do is, right now my access control list does not have the log keyword at the end of it. So we need to do two things. Step one is going to be to copy our access control list, modify it, and then reapply it. And step two is going to be to tell our router where the logging server is. So let's do show run. And that will show us the configuration. And what I want to do is grab that access control list here, and I'm going to copy it. And to copy it with PuTTY, all I'm doing is selecting the text that I want to copy. I'm going to go open up Notepad and then just paste my access control list. Now, something you should notice that when we're working with access control list, the router will change our port numbers sometimes from port 80 to port www, which is the same exact thing here. All I'm going to do here is add the log keyword at the end of each line. So now we have the log keyword added. Next, what I want to do is go back into my configuration and look at Fast Ethernet 00 where this list is applied. And I'm going to actually copy that configuration out of here as well. And I'm going to put that right before this. We don't need to do anything with the IP address there. And before I modify that access control list, I'm going to remove it from the interface. It's always a good idea to remove that access control list from our interface before we make changes to it. We don't always have to do this, but it is a good practice to get into. So we're going to get rid of our applied access list on F00. We're going to modify example 2 to put the log keyword at the end of it. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to get rid of this access control list first. Because if I do not get rid of the access control list first, what's going to happen is I'm just going to add all of these lines with the log keyword into it right after my deny statement, and that's the last thing that I want to do. So we're going to delete our extended access list and then recreate our access list with the log keywords on it. And then last, what we'll do is we'll reapply it to the interface. Notice that I'm prepping all of my commands here in Notepad. This is really nifty because I know exactly what I want to do here. I have all of the correct commands that I copied right from the configuration of my router. And now what I can do is I can have this act as a little script so I don't have to do a lot of typing. So we're going to select all this, copy it, and then go back to our router, go into config mode, and just right click to paste it. And what that'll do is it's going to do all those steps for me all at once really quickly. And now I have just deleted, rewritten, and reapplied my access control list, all by just right-clicking to paste that text right into my router. So now we have the log keyword added to each line of our access list. Now we need to tell the router where the logging server is. And I'm going to set that up at 10.0.0.16. The nice part about logging is that logging is just a message that's coming right from the router. So since we're only filtering traffic in the inbound direction on F00, we don't have to worry about the outbound traffic for our log messages getting hit by the access control list. Additionally, any traffic that originates from the router does not get filtered through the access control list. So even if we had an outbound access control list on F00 here, the one that connects to my syslog server, any traffic originating from the router, including logging messages, do not get filtered by the access control list. Let's go set up the logging server now on my PC so that we can actually see the messages as they're coming in. So I'm going to minimize my notepad window there. Let's do a search here. I still have Kiwi syslog installed on here. This is from the application layer protocols course, which was previous to this one. So we have this all set up. What we need to do is we need to specify our sources here. So we're going to go to setup. I may have some lingering IP addresses in there from a previous configuration here. So let's go remove all of these addresses that I do not want in here. And we'll just keep 10.0.0.1 in there. So we'll have that applied. That should be the address that's sourcing the log messages. And let's just try sending a ping message to 192.168.10.10, and that should create hits on our access control list. And there we go. So once I sent that message through, it started the logging process and started sending messages to my workstation. And then the second line here, it says IP access list log. The list that we're using is example 2, and we permitted ICMP traffic from 10.0.0.16 to 192.168.10.10. If I go to the web browser, let's open up Chrome. We're going to make that only partial there. We'll do Control-Shift-N to get our incognito window, 192.168.10.10. And now we should see a log message saying that we are going to port 80. Right here, the top message, we see a message now that we're coming from my workstation going to 192.168.10.10 on port 80. We also see here that we denied a message. It looks like we have a message coming from 10.0.0.16 going to 10.0.0.255, and that was denied. So this is hitting our last line of our access list and getting denied. So as we look at this, we can see exactly what messages are going in and out of our router at any given time. This becomes very useful when we're troubleshooting, especially if we can keep a long history or a relatively long history of these messages that are getting hit by our access control list. We can use that sometimes to go back in the past and do some reconnaissance about some issues or events that were happening on our network. So logging ACLs is a really useful utility. This is something that we typically do by default on firewalls when we implement them, because we do want to log all of the traffic that's coming in and out of our firewall.